Welcome to the Morning Walk with Murdy Digital Stroll. So I want you to imagine something for a second.
Oh, okay. Setting the scene.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine waking up tomorrow, grabbing your phone, and you realize that every digital voice, your screen reader, your car's GPS, your smart home assistant, none of it speaks your native language anymore.
Wow, that sounds incredibly disorienting.
Right. If you want to use the modern internet, you have to do it in a language that just isn't yours. It sounds like this dystopian sci-fi setup, but for millions of people around the globe, this isn't a thought experiment. It's their everyday reality.
It is a profound disconnect. I mean, we are looking at a massive systemic issue that sits right at the intersection of artificial intelligence, accessibility, and really how we pass down human knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
From my perspective, this is a crisis of what we might call Gurukul 2.0, the modern digital transmission of wisdom. If a student cannot access the vast repository of human knowledge because the digital tools literally cannot speak their language, the entire lineage of that culture's learning is just severely disrupted.
And from my perspective as a strategic auditor of digital trends, this is fundamentally a story about digital migration. Like, we are auditing the digital landscape to see who gets to move into the digital future and who gets left off the ledger entirely.
Which is exactly what today's deep dive is about.
Exactly. We're looking at a fascinating 2026 article from the DAISY Consortium by Dave Gunn. It's titled The Missing Voices. And this source material really pulls back the curtain on a massive blind spot in our tech infrastructure, specifically artificial intelligence and text-to-speech, or TTS technology.
Yeah, and we really need to acknowledge the illusion of ubiquity here, because you listening right now, you probably interact with synthetic voices constantly.
All the time.
Right. You ask your smart speaker for the weather, or an AI reads an article to you while you commute. And these voices have become so advanced, using neural networks to map human speech, that they are nearly indistinguishable from a real person.
Right. They've eliminated those weird, robotic audible artifacts, the strange clicks and unnatural breathing sounds that used to make old text-to-speech so incredibly distracting.
Yeah, it used to be awful.
It really was. For someone with a print disability, a high-quality screen reader is a true technological marvel. It is quite literally a passport to independent living and learning.
But, and this is crucial, that passport is only being issued to a select few. The natural flow, the flawless intonation, the pacing, that frictionless transfer of knowledge is an exclusive club.
Okay, let's unpack this, because there is a massive catch to this frictionless digital utopia. The very technological revolution that is supposedly democratizing information is, it's actively leaving behind thousands of languages. Let's look at the ledger for a second.
Let's do it.
The leading AI text-to-speech services currently support somewhere around 140 languages. Now, on the surface, 140 sounds pretty robust, right?
It sounds like a lot to the average person.
Yeah, if I asked you to name 140 languages, you'd probably tap out after 30.
Yeah.
But what is the actual denominator here?
Well, there are approximately 7,100 languages in use globally today.
Wow. Okay, so 140 out of 7,100, that's not a gap, that's just a canyon.
It is a canyon. Now, let's synthesize those numbers fairly, though. About 44% of those 7,100 languages are spoken by smaller, often indigenous populations.
Okay.
So linguists classify those as endangered, which usually means they have fewer than 1,000 active users.
Which is exactly where a tech executive steps in and says, look, from a purely logistical standpoint, we can't allocate millions of dollars to build complex AI neural models for a language spoken by 500 people.
And that is the standard industry defense. But even if we completely accept that premise, even if we subtract that entire 44% of endangered languages from the equation, we are still left with roughly 4,000 non-endangered languages.
That's huge.
4,000 distinct languages with robust, active, growing communities that have absolutely zero text-to-speech support.
It's like the tech world built this massive, state-of-the-art global highway system, but they just forgot to build off-ramps for over half the towns on Earth.
That's a great way to put it.
Wait, I want to make sure I'm understanding the mechanics of this, though. Is this simply a matter of tech companies just not having gotten around to them yet? Is it just a delayed software rollout? Or is there an actual structural barrier preventing these 4,000 languages from coming online?
What's fascinating here is that it is a profound structural barrier, and it's rooted in the architecture of AI itself. When AI generates high-quality audio in a dominant language like English, it isn't just stringing together recorded syllables like the old 1990s software did.
Right, it's way more advanced now.
Exactly. It's using a neural network trained on millions of hours of audio to predict and generate the precise acoustic waveforms of human speech. It understands the context, the emotion, the phonetic rules of that specific language.
But when it encounters an underserved language,
The system essentially crashes. The AI tries to apply the phonetic rules and acoustic models it learned from, say, English or Spanish, to a language with completely different structures.
oh wow.
Yeah, maybe it's a tonal language or it uses complex consonant clusters. The resulting audio isn't just a little lower quality. It reverts to a highly robotic, inaccurate, and ultimately unusable state.
So it just breaks.
Right. The technology actively cannot process a linguistic structure.
Yeah.
It hasn't been specifically and extensively trained to map.
I see. So to really understand the scale of this digital migration failure,
Yeah.
we need to look beyond the numbers and see how these technical failures actually impact human beings.
We do.
And Dave Gunn's article in the DAISY Consortium provides some incredible case studies. Rather than just giving a geographic tour, I want to look at the thematic through lines here. Let's start with that concept of technical incompatibility you just mentioned and how it creates a literal data void. The article uses South Africa to highlight this.
Yeah, South Africa is the perfect stress test for this technology because the country officially recognizes 12 languages.
Which is amazing.
It is, and you have a highly developed nation attempting to provide equal access. Libraries and accessible content providers are doing everything they can to support visually impaired readers across all 12 languages, but the AI infrastructure outright fails them.
And the sources note that when local developers try to force existing TTS systems to read local African languages, these bizarre things happen. Background noises mysteriously creep into the synthetic audio, or the software just freezes and crashes. Why is that happening on a technical level?
It all comes down to the foundational data. AI learns by consuming data. To build a voice model, an AI needs a massive digitized footprint of that language.
Like millions of words.
Thousands of hours of clean audio paired perfectly with accurate text transcripts. If a language's history, its literature, and its daily communication haven't been meticulously digitized and tagged, the AI is essentially trying to learn a language in a vacuum. It hallucinates. It produces errors.
So it's an infrastructure problem before it's even a software problem.
Precisely. If the foundational digital source material isn't there, producing accessible audiobooks becomes mathematically impossible for the algorithm. It is a complete collapse of the modern knowledge ecosystem for those communities.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because even when a tech company manages to scrape together enough data to build a rudimentary voice, the cognitive toll on the user is massive. Let's look at the situation in Paraguay.
Right, the Guarani example.
Yes, one of their official widely spoken languages is Guarani. Now, a synthetic Guarani voice technically exists, but the source material describes it as being so robotic and unnatural that it literally cannot be used for continuous reading.
Think about the stamina required to listen to that. Imagine trying to read a dense, 400-page textbook on biology or history, and the voice reading it to you sounds like a glitching 1980s computer.
It would give you a headache in 5 minutes.
Exactly. It demands so much cognitive load just to decipher the words that you have no mental energy left to actually comprehend the subject matter.
Which forces a heartbreaking compromise.
Yeah.
Because the Guarani digital infrastructure has failed, visually impaired Guarani speakers are forced to rely on Spanish synthetic voices. If you have a print disability in Paraguay and you want to study complex subjects, the technology forces you to do it in a second language.
And that fundamentally breaks the promise of Gurukul 2.0. The digital space is supposed to be this ultimate equalizer. Wisdom and knowledge should flow freely to anyone, anywhere.
Right.
But in Paraguay, while physical braille materials might exist in Guarani, digital audio resources are restricted to tiny, manually recorded excerpts. Teachers are out there spending countless hours manually adapting content just so their students can have a baseline level of access.
And lest anyone listening think this is strictly an issue of economics in developing regions, the final case study shatters that assumption completely. Let's talk about the infrastructure and metadata failure happening right now in Northern Europe with the Sami languages.
This is such a vital example. The Sami languages, including Northern Sami, Inari Sami, and Skolt Sami, they're spoken across parts of Finland, Sweden, Norway, and Russia.
So very wealthy areas.
Exactly. We are talking about highly developed nations with some of the most advanced digital infrastructures and highest standards of living on the planet, yet the digital barriers for Sami speakers are extreme.
I have to admit, when I read the data on Northern Sami, which is the most widely spoken of the dialects, the numbers stopped me in my tracks.
You mean the audiobook production?
Yes. Can you guess how many accessible audiobooks exist across all of Northern Sami? 60 total in the entire history of the language.
It's unbelievable.
39 of those were produced over a 15-year span by the Celia Library, with a handful of others coming from Norway and Sweden. They are producing new talking books at a rate of roughly 2 per year.
It's staggering, and it perfectly illustrates the manual bottleneck. Because there are no usable text-to-speech AI models for Sami languages, every single accessible book has to be recorded manually in a studio by a human being.
Which relies entirely on human availability. The sources note there are exactly 2 Northern Sami narrators currently available for these production studios. 2 people are carrying the entire digital literary weight of a language.
Yeah.
But wait, I'm stuck on something else the article mentioned. Even when these 60 books exist, users can't always find them. How is that possible? Like, a digital file is a digital file, right?
Well, this is where the unseen architecture of the internet works against underserved languages. It's an invisible barrier known as metadata bias.
Metadata bias. Explain how that physically prevents someone from finding a book.
So global library systems and digital bookstores rely on standardized filing systems like metadata protocols such as ONIX or MRC to categorize books.
Okay, sure.
These systems use specific ISO language codes, but these international standards often don't have distinct codes for specific indigenous dialects or underserved languages. They might just get lumped under a generic code like other or unknown.
Oh, I see. So if a visually impaired student searches the library database for a book in Skolt Sami,
the search query returns 0 results. Not because the server doesn't have the audio file, but because the digital filing cabinet wasn't built with the drawer for their language. The architecture itself refuses to acknowledge their existence.
that is a phenomenal failure of auditing. I mean, we have built a global ledger that literally lacks the columns to record these cultures, which brings us to the ultimate question. Why? Why is this silence happening? We're talking about artificial intelligence models that can write complex software code, generate photorealistic video from a text prompt, and pass the bar exam.
Right, the tech is there.
So why can't we just feed an AI a Guarani dictionary and some grammar rules and have it read a book?
Well, the sources outline a trio of core barriers, and to understand them, we really have to understand how these tech giants operate. First, you have market economics. The development of a sophisticated neural text-to-speech model requires massive computational power and millions of dollars. Technology companies are publicly traded businesses. They prioritize investment in languages that offer massive, profitable global markets. English, Mandarin, Spanish. These offer an immediate return on investment.
So what does this all mean for the grand narrative we've been sold about AI? We've been told for the last 5 years that AI is this great democratizing force that will level the playing field for everyone. But from an auditor's perspective, this sounds like AI actually requires a massive pile of pre-existing digital wealth in the form of digitized data and market capitalization just to get through the door.
It absolutely does. The technology that should be removing barriers is in many ways actively reinforcing them. And that brings us to the second barrier we touched on earlier, which is training data. You asked why we can't just feed the AI a dictionary. It's because modern neural networks don't learn by memorizing rules. They learn by finding patterns in massive data sets. Local and indigenous languages have incredibly rich oral traditions, but that cultural knowledge hasn't been scraped, transcribed, and formatted into the specific digital data sets that AI companies feed their models.
It's like teaching a musician to play exclusively on a piano for 10 years and then handing them a trombone and expecting them to sight read a symphony. The underlying mechanics of the instrument, the language, are fundamentally incompatible with their training.
That is an excellent analogy, and it leads perfectly to the third barrier, AI training bias. The foundational models themselves, the base architecture of these large language models, are structurally biased because they were built by and for dominant languages.
Right, so the AI assumes that all languages operate with a subject-verb-object structure, or that phonetics behave the way they do in English. When you try to force a completely different linguistic structure, say a polysynthetic language, where a single word functions as an entire sentence into that English-trained model, it literally doesn't have the parameters to map it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, many linguists and technologists refer to this as a form of digital colonization. We're essentially telling these 4,000 language communities, you can migrate to the digital world, but you have to leave your cultural framework behind and use ours.
Wow.
The consequences are existential. If a language has no digital voice, and students are forced to study in another language, the native tongue slowly begins to fade from daily functional use. It becomes a relic rather than a living, breathing tool of the modern world.
That is a deeply unsettling reality. But I do want to pivot to the ongoing push for a solution, because the DAISY Consortium article isn't just a list of grievances. There's a very specific, aggressive reframing of this issue happening right now among global organizations.
Yes, and this is a crucial ideological shift. The sources highlight that partner organizations like the World Blind Union, the WBU, and ICEVI have issued a joint agreement. They are moving away from asking for tech favors and are stating unequivocally that a lack of access to high-quality synthetic speech is fundamentally a human rights issue.
I love that they are drawing a hard line in the sand there. They're rejecting the premise that AI text-to-speech is just a nice-to-have feature or a luxury upgrade for your phone. When the modern knowledge economy operates entirely digitally, a lack of TTS is a literal, tangible barrier preventing entry into society.
Exactly.
If you have a print disability and your language isn't supported, you are being systematically denied your right to access information.
It is the denial of the right to learn. It is shutting the doors to the modern Gurukul. But Dave Gunn's article does offer a significant silver lining here. Despite the massive gap, there is currently more intense, focused work taking place on synthetic speech development than ever before.
Because the sheer speed of AI advancement is a double-edged sword, right? Yes, the rapid commercialization left these 4,000 languages behind, but the underlying technology is now so powerful that it possesses the ability to catch them up rapidly if we choose to direct it that way.
Precisely. The lessons developers have learned from mapping the dominant languages, figuring out how to make a neural network generate perfectly natural English or Mandarin without those audible artifacts. Those architectural breakthroughs could potentially be adapted to rapidly improve support for underserved languages. We don't necessarily have to start from scratch. We just need the intention and the infrastructure to do it.
But it's not going to happen passively. We can't just wait for the free market to suddenly care about Skolt Sami. It requires highly coordinated action. It requires dedicated funding outside of traditional tech venture capital. And most importantly, requires deep, respectful collaboration between technology companies, linguistic communities, and disability organizations to ensure the data is collected ethically and effectively.
This raises an important question, though, about intent versus impact in the tech industry. I don't believe software engineers set out with the malicious intent to silence 4,000 languages. But by exclusively prioritizing speed, scale, and market economics, that is exactly the impact they're having on the global transmission of knowledge.
So we've audited the digital highway today. We found the massive gaps in our digital migration. We've seen how technical incompatibilities force visually impaired students in Paraguay to abandon their native Guarani for Spanish just to read a textbook.
Yeah.
We've seen how metadata bias and a reliance on manual human labor leaves Sami readers waiting half a year just to get a single new audiobook.
The takeaway is clear, really. We currently possess the technological tools to bring every single human language into the modern knowledge ecosystem. The barrier is no longer purely scientific, it is structural and economic. The question is whether we have the collective will to digitize human wisdom equitably.
So the next time you seamlessly ask your smart device to read an article out loud, or you listen to your GPS confidently navigate you through traffic in your native tongue, take a moment to think about the vast, silent majority of the world's languages that are locked out of that experience.
The digital realm is becoming the primary vessel for human culture. Who we invite into that vessel matters.
And that leaves us with something completely new to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. We've talked a lot about AI forcing languages into extinction by ignoring them, but what about the inverse?
What do you mean?
Well, as these AI models become the mandatory gatekeepers to the digital world, where we see native speakers begin to intentionally alter how they speak their own languages, like will communities start flattening their accents, changing their grammar, or abandoning complex phonetics entirely, simply to make themselves understood by the algorithms?
Oh, wow.
Are we entering an era where human beings must redesign their own cultural voice just to serve the machine? Or will we finally use this incredibly advanced AI to preserve the full spectrum of human voices before it's too late?
A truly unsettling yet vital question for the future of human expression. Until next time.
Thanks for walking with us.